Daniel Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 4 matchup between the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs and the Nebraska Cornhuskers, two teams that are trying to build some momentum here in Week 4. Nebraska's a team that's now 1-2 on the season, got their first win of the season last week against Northern Illinois. This is a team that's definitely facing some uncertainty right now, so a huge game for them to build some momentum as they look forward to the tough conference slate as they take on Louisiana Tech. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today. Let's get started with your team trends. Louisiana Tech's a team that just lost to North Texas 37-40 last week, but this team did play in Week 0, so this is actually the 5th game of the season already for Louisiana Tech. This team is 2-2 on the season. They won their Week 0 matchup, won in Week 2 against Northwestern State, and otherwise a close loss to North Texas, and then also got blown out by SMU. But for Nebraska on the other side, this team has had a tougher schedule so far this season. Opened up with a conference game at Minnesota, then played Colorado, who is the story of college football right now. That's a team that's now ranked in the top 20 and undefeated, and then beat NIU last week 35-11, which overall, I mean, a pretty impressive win for Nebraska. I know NIU's not anything special, but at least this team showed some promise offensively. That's what we've been waiting for. Obviously, Week 1, Week 2, this offense was just ugly to say the least, and defensively, this is a team that's really shown promise as well. So, I mean, defensively, they were as strong as you would expect, and offensively, this team was not bad against NIU, so that is definitely something that you want to keep in mind, and I think there's more optimism for Nebraska heading into Week 4 as there was heading into Week 3. Games will be on the 23rd in Lincoln. Kickoff is 2:30 Central Time. Spread's going with Nebraska by 3 touchdowns, so Nebraska is heavily favored heading into this matchup. Over-under is 47 as well. So more of a moderate to a lower scoring game is likely expected for this one. FPI is going with Nebraska as well, 84%. Series history, Nebraska last played this team in 2006. Nebraska won it 49-10. Louisiana Tech has never beaten Nebraska. Your stat comparison for this one, LA Tech is 75th in points per game, 98th in points allowed. So overall, a team that's really middle of the road. They're not very good in rush defense, which they're going up against a Nebraska team that is going to run the ball on you constantly. This is a team that is 17th in the country in rush yards a game. This is a team that is just, to say it up front, not a very strong team in the passing game. We saw Jeff Sims start the first 2 games of the season against Minnesota and Colorado, and the passing game was bad to say the least. He was just not good. Jeff Sims this season so far, 220 yards, a touchdown, and 4 picks. He's already thrown 4 interceptions this season. It's really tough to win football games when you're turning over the ball that much. So you consider that. And Heinrich Harburg, obviously, in there last week for this team. I think Harburg should stay in for Nebraska in this matchup. I feel like he's Nebraska's best chance to win right now. Obviously, there's a lot. The coaches know a lot more than anybody else does, but the way Jeff Sims has played so far this season, the first couple of games, the fumbled snaps and the interceptions and the inaccuracy and everything, I just feel like Heinrich Harburg can't go wrong at this point. He's a guy that's got a much higher ceiling. Jeff Sims is an older player who's got experience, but he hasn't broken through, and it doesn't look like this is the time for him either. So, I mean, may as well go with a younger quarterback, Harburg, who definitely has a higher ceiling. But for Nebraska, otherwise, defensively, this is a really strong team. 35th in the country in points allowed. They're 3rd in rush defense and 77th in pass defense. Your recent matchups, Louisiana Tech lost to North Texas by 3, beat Northwestern State by 30, and then, of course, the loss to SMU. That one was ugly, 14-38 being the final, and beat FIU 22-17. So this is a 2-win team that really hasn't been overall too impressive. But for Nebraska on the other side, the loss to Minnesota, where this team should have won, but they collapsed there in the 4th quarter. They lost to Colorado on the road, 14-36, and then the big win over Northern Illinois, 35-11. And, I mean, overall, you look at the past 3 games for Nebraska, 35 points last week, obviously against an NIU team that's not impressive, but still this offense finally was able to do something. And obviously now having 2 of your top running backs out, it's going to really depend on Anthony Grant in that backfield now. So you consider that. I feel like Harburg is just the best answer quarterback right now. Jeff Sims is a player who can run the ball, but throwing is definitely iffy right now. And so, I mean, we'll see where this team goes with Haarberg, but if Haarberg starts in this matchup, I would really assume that he's going to be the starter for the future, for the foreseeable future at least, or until he loses the job. So that's something you want to consider. But for Louisiana Tech, they got Hank Beckmeyer as the quarterback, who obviously is the Boise State transfer. He's got experience himself. He hasn't been overall too impressive this season so far, but not terrible. 700 yards, 5 touchdowns, over 2 picks so far this season. So obviously, turning over the ball is going to be crucial in this matchup. If you're Louisiana Tech, can't be turning over the ball too much, because Nebraska, that's the way that Nebraska is going to win this game, is off of turnovers, as that's where Nebraska really shines, is defensively. But, I mean, for the offense for Nebraska, obviously we're going to see a lot of rushing, and for Louisiana Tech, a team that's very poor with defending the run, that is definitely an issue. But for LA Tech, this team needs to force turnovers, take advantage of that, and score as many points as they can. And obviously, this Nebraska offense is nothing too special. So for this defense, if you're Louisiana Tech, obviously forcing turnovers is going to be huge, and keeping it as close as you can as well. You never know what can happen. But for Nebraska, really how far this team goes is going to heavily depend on the offense. I feel like defensively, this is a team that can get to a bowl game, maybe even past that, get up to 8 or 9 wins, and get to maybe even Indianapolis, be in contention for the Big Ten title. But the problem is, it's just the offense right now. This is an offensive team that really lacks depth, and obviously the injuries to Gabe Ervin and Ramir Johnson do not help anything. So you consider all of that, this is still a pretty inexperienced offense. That's something you want to consider, even though this is still a team that's got talent and potential. But this is definitely a crucial matchup, though, for Nebraska. Having won last week, you want to build some momentum heading into the Big Ten Conference slate. And with that, let's get to the prediction here for Louisiana Tech and Nebraska coming up here in Week 4. And in the end, I'm going to be going with Nebraska. No surprise there. 31-13 is my predicted final score. I do think Nebraska is going to be more dominant in this matchup. Once again, the matchup is really good for Nebraska, being such a run-dominant team going up against a very poor Louisiana Tech defense, especially against the run. So I think Nebraska finds a way to score 31, and honestly, this is a team that could score more than that, but also you got to consider the weather conditions. Don't look to be great as of right now, so that's also taken into consideration. But for Louisiana Tech, I do think this team is able to score 13. I think this offense is good, but the Nebraska defense is really what's going to dominate here, I think, against this Bulldog team. So I'm going to say 75% towards Nebraska. I'm more confident about Nebraska this week to win versus last week. Once again, the matchup is just really good for the Huskers, I think. Over-under is 47. I'm taking the under, and Louisiana Tech to cover the spread in the end. I do think the spread's kind of heavy towards Nebraska at 3 touchdowns, especially with some of the uncertainty of this Nebraska offense right now. But with that, let me know your thoughts and comments below on this prediction, and I appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.